All righty, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe we're ready to start in earnest. So if we could have your attention, please, that would be great. So before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. There are restrooms available out there to your left and to your right. Of course, we also do have coffee. We have snacks and water available for you. So you're welcome, of course, to go and grab any of that as you need throughout the presentation. My name is Rob Collins. I am an innovative program consultant with the Division of Innovative Learning in the Kentucky Department of Education. I'm the guy that's been bugging you with emails about this event probably for a couple of months now. It's so very exciting to see you here today and for all of us to join together. I know there's been a hunger for in-person convening ever since the pandemic, and it looks like we're finally getting back to that space. I also want to call out that we do have several folks who could not join us either because of travel constraints or because of staffing issues, as I'm sure you all know, and they are joining us virtually. So this meeting is being streamed via Microsoft Teams. It's also being recorded, so at a later date we can post it on KDE's media portal and others can access it as well. So if there's anything wonderful you find in today's events, and trust me, there will be, you are welcome to send that to other folks so they can watch it and take those messages as well. So again, thank you so much. This is our 2022-2023 convening of the Kentucky Innovative Learning Network. We have so much work to do together this year, and I'm excited to get that started and really hit the ground running. So, Superintendent Turner already welcomed you to the Ignite Institute, to this amazing space. We're so very grateful to him and to the rest of the folks at Boone County Schools and Ignite Institute for welcoming us here. A special thanks to Bill Hogan, who's really been very helpful. He's the Director of Innovation here. He's been very willing to acquiesce to requests. So we're very thankful for the use of this space. Thank you, Bill. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and start off. We have a packed agenda for you today. I'll go through and let you know what to expect. And we hope, of course, to stick to these times as best we can, but we will be flexible if we need to be. So from 8:15 to 9:15, we will be welcoming you and having this opening presentation. We'll be discussing the purpose of the KYILN. We'll discuss some of the initiatives that you're involved in, how those initiatives connect to the United We Learn vision, and really grounding this work that you do in the larger vision for Kentucky schools and Kentucky's education. From 9:15 to 9:30, we'll have a small break for you to grab refreshments, get up and stretch, connect with each other. From 9:30 to 11:30, we're very excited to welcome Dr. Bobby Mcdonald from Education Reimagined. She's going to offer a keynote to you on learner-centered ecosystems and also walk us through a really exciting activity called Back to the Future, where we imagine what the future of education can be. So we'll come together, decide what our values are for our communities, and imagine that space, and then work to make it happen. From 11:30 to 12:45, you are going to have lunch on your own out in the community. In an earlier email I sent, the folks at Ignite put together a list of local restaurants and directions to get there so you can access that. We'll resume promptly at 12:45 for the second half of the day. Second half of the day is the part I'm most excited for. It's our tour of the Ignite Institute and the moment we get to interact with students. So from 12:45 to 1, they'll give you a quick overview of Ignite. From 1 to 2, best part of the day, we're going to have student-led learning tours. So I know at Ignite, they really value leadership skills in students, and these students will be guiding you, giving you a tour, answering your questions. From 2 to 15, we'll have a quick Q&A for any questions that arise from that learning tour. From 2:15 to 2:45, we'll have a discussion about community-based accountability systems with Dr. Henry Webb of Kenton County Schools. And from 2:45 to 3 o'clock, we'll discuss next steps, what we're doing in the ILN, and where we go from here. Before I get going any further, I've seen some folks taking pictures. So we are a network here to collaborate together, here to connect with one another. If you happen to take a photo with your pal next to you, or take a photo of any of the amazing things you see today, and you happen to be on Twitter, feel free to use the hashtag KYILN just to gather in that space. I think it's very useful in a network when you collect the work that you do and the thinking you do together. And this is the way that we're doing it. So hashtag KYILN if you're on Twitter. And if you're not, I don't blame you or judge you in any way.
Who's that talking?
Okay, so one of the larger parts of today is really ironing out what is the purpose of the KYILN, of the Kentucky Innovative Learning Network. What even is the Kentucky Innovative Learning Network, and dispelling any misconceptions we may have, and really grounding each of us here in what we are here to do. The ILN is a network in truest sense of the word. It is a place for us to connect together, to collaborate on problems of practice, to share successes, to share issues we may be having so that we can work through them together, and to engage in professional learning. This particular space is meant for you to work together on the various initiatives that you are already involved in, to improve those initiatives, to advance the future of education in Kentucky. It is just that. It is a space for connection, for collaboration, and for learning. Through that collaboration, through that learning, we support that vision of United We Learn. I'm not going to go into United We Learn too deeply yet. I'm saving that for Sarah Snipes and David Cook, our leaders in the Division of Innovative Learning. They'll go over that with you and talk about its inception and its purpose later, but we advance that purpose through our work in the ILN. I want to make a very quick acknowledgement that, especially in the Commonwealth of Kentucky right now, there are a lot of opportunities happening. There are a lot of initiatives, and sometimes we see there's cross-pollination with those initiatives. We see that they are siloed so that maybe the connection between these initiatives is not entirely clear. What we want to clear up for you is that the ILN is not another initiative. It is not another piece of work that you have to advance. It is simply that space so that you can improve the work you are already doing. So don't worry that it's something else you have to add onto your plate. It's just enrichment there. It's support, much like a professional learning community is support in a school for teachers. And with that being said, I'll join you in just a moment again, but I'm going to queue up Sarah Snipes, our program manager with the Division of Innovative Learning, to discuss not only United We Learn, but also some of the work you've been doing and celebrate it and connect it to this larger vision. So, Sarah.
And I will add by calling up my partner in crime, as you all know, David Cook, our director of the Division of Innovative Learning at KDE as well. So as he makes his way up here, you know, I think because you're in this room today, you are not former classroom teacher. I cannot stand still. We've talked in various spaces with you about United We Learn. I don't think, and I hope if we've certainly done our jobs, it has not been able to escape you over the last year or so, and many of you because you've been on the front lines through our local laboratories of learning and the various initiatives that Rob alluded to. So we just wanted to take a moment here today to kind of frame the conversations that you have with each other, let you know kind of the conversations that all of our work at the State Department are really truly anchored around this work. And just give you, if you are less aware of what United We Learn means, or if you have team members here today who are just being introduced to this vision that Kentuckians have for our future of education here in the state, that we help familiarize you with this work and welcome you in, and that the ILN is just one way that we hope to do that with you. So I'm going to pass it on to David here just to talk about the big ideas and just to remind you or let you know where this work started and how we got to where we are today.
Thanks, Sarah. So United We Learn started way back in March of 21. Many of you will remember during the pandemic, you might have been involved. We had a series of listening tours with Dr. Glass. They were virtual, obviously, because of the pandemic, but during those listening tours, we gathered a bunch of evidence, data from Kentuckians. And we asked them two simple questions. What's your experience with the public education system in Kentucky? And if you were going to think about what you would want it to look like, how would that be different? And that's what created this impetus for the United We Learn vision. So we took all of that data, and over the summer of 21, we wrote a report called the United We Learn Report. And in that report was all that information about what people thought the future of education in Kentucky needed to look like. And it included a whole bunch of different things. You can read that report on the KDE website if you haven't. But the three big ideas that you see in front of you were the central themes that bubbled up out of all of that. And those three ideas are that we want every student to have a more vibrant learning experience every day. I think everybody in the room can raise their hand and say yes. We want to encourage and scale innovation, especially when it comes to assessment and accountability. Many of you are in that process as well. If you're in L3, you're definitely in that process. We'll talk about L3s too. But if you're even involved, and we're going to hear later today from Superintendent from Kenton County that's going to talk about some of that work, the accountability work that's coming into Kentucky, and I know you're involved in that. And then the third one is, we want this, and this is to me, and this is just David talking, and you guys, many of you know David. This is the most important thing on this list, because the other two we're talking about all the time, we're doing it. But what makes what's happening now different, and different from anything that's happening in any other, at a state level, anywhere else, is that we're doing this in a co-creation format with communities. It's not just the old-fashioned way of, oh, we're going to do something in our district, and we'll invite a few people from the community. We have basically required that this work be done in a co-creating way with the community. So you can't, it's got to have everybody at the table, because what we're trying to do here, folks, is recognize that we're going to be better off if we build local systems. That's what Bobby's going to talk to you about a little bit. Local systems that then drive the state to change, rather than, okay, here's your accountability system, go do it. So, three big ideas, and as Sarah, she said it, and I want to say it, and I'll say it 100 times today. That first statement that's in italics up there, that first word. Nothing about the United We Learn vision is KDE created. Everything about the United We Learn vision was created by folks like you. Parents, business people, students, people from Kentucky told us what they wanted. That's a big thing, and that makes a difference, because when I have to talk to policymakers, and I go to them and say, Kentuckians said they wanted this. It's hard for them to say, what? No? Is that KDE's new vision? No, it's not KDE's new vision, it's Kentucky's new vision. So.
And that's messy and that's scary, because that goes against a lot of the systems that exist, right? We're even as district administrators, right? People come to you to see the vision, right? We lay that path out in front of folks often. And so even for us, that's messy and that feels different. And oddly enough, this morning on the drive up here, I was looking for a new audiobook to start on the drive, and I ended up clicking on The Upside of Uncertainty. And that just felt very appropriate for the conversations that I've been in lately, even yesterday on a Portrait of the Learner conversation. And this is such a time and space for uncertainty. And while I was at first feeling fear about that, and sometimes nervous to step forward into that, this morning just resonated with me in saying nothing great in our lives, in the systems that we have, ever started without first stepping into a space of discomfort and uncertainty, right? We cannot know when we're working so deeply with communities what lies ahead. And so just excited to step into that uncertainty with all of you as well. So we are just going to talk as Rob mentioned, there are various initiatives that your district is part of. A lot of that is because you've been engaged in this network for a few years now. Some of you are new. We'll talk about how we've grown over the last few years, but we are so excited that you all have continued to be leaders in the state of Kentucky. You are the districts that leadership turns to say, what are you doing? Let us learn from you. You have the vision and the drive to try new things and do the work that is best for students and learners in your community. So as David mentioned, one of our 3 big ideas is creating vibrant learning experiences. And we see you doing this every day, right? Just a raise of hands, who in the room is planning deeper learning with their regional co-op? Wonderful. And what you're doing, I hope to see heads nodding, is creating more vibrant learning experiences, right? We're truly reaching deeper learning for our students. That is exactly what is happening. What about scaling project-based learning? Anyone in here working with PBL Works or perhaps a different group to work through project-based learning, bringing that experience to students? Fabulous. We have 7 districts who are rolling out our math badging and Algebra 1 micro-credentialing work. I know you are in the room. Raise your hand. Algebra 1 pilots. Fantastic. Really shifting the learner experience. And our L3 communities, raise your hand. You all are, you have developed or will develop with your community student experience prototypes first. How are we shifting their experience that will guide assessment and accountability? And we are also encouraging innovation. That's why we are here in this space specifically. But as Kentuckians emphasize, we really want to focus not just on innovation more broadly, but on assessment. And you are doing that as well. Who is developing or has a portrait of a graduate in their district? Wonderful. L3 accountability models. I'll have you guys raise your hands again. You're tackling a lot of this work. Math badging. Specifically leaning into what are performance assessments and how do those tasks and outcomes look for our students. Project-based learning. Again, folks in the room and more. I do want to lift up yesterday, Superintendent Travis Hanby of Allen County is here with us today or virtual. Lifted up, you know, it's inescapable that so many of our teams and communities are doing the work across United We Learn. And we lifted up, as we mentioned, that the L3s are tackling a lot of these issues and needs of Kentuckians. And so I just wanted to play for you very briefly this video that we created that will give you an update. We have 7 districts in Cohort 1. We have 18 total across 3 cohorts. So what you'll see in this video is our first 7 districts who started this journey back in the fall of 2021. Yeah, we've been at this a while, haven't we? Back in the fall of 2021, they started this journey and have since developed those student experience and assessment prototypes that we've talked about. And so just wanted to update you all in case you're not aware of where they are in that journey and what their communities have designed together.
To learn about what the capturing and communicating learning in a competency-based way might look like. So we're very interested in Franklin County's L3 project. We think we might have some stuff to learn there. We're just out of curiosity, so I might reach out to y'all. Where's Franklin County?
It's Frankfurt. It's actually Frankfurt.
Frankfurt. Oh, Frankfurt Independent. Oh, okay, thank you. Are they here?
They may be online today, but we'll definitely connect you now.
Good. So yeah, we're excited to learn more about the other L3 groups.
Anyone else noticing, wondering? So I know we're talking specifically about the L3s in this example, but recognizing that a lot of this work is still underway, getting started, and you have work in your districts that we may not even be aware of yet, and that is the point of this space. So while the L3s have a community of practice where they come together, as Maddie mentioned, they can connect, they can work through problems of practice and learn from each other. This is the space where they are with you. And so we encourage you to make those connections. If you heard something you want to talk to those teams, please do so. That's exactly what you're here to do. Have lunch with that team, talk to your peers in other districts, and that's where some really powerful learning happens.
Yeah, I just was Alan from Jefferson County as well. Not only what you saw here, but I know going through the process, what But I think we had been sensing in Jefferson County, it seems like, everybody was breathing in the same air, drinking the same water, and all the other groups that we were talking about, because while every one of them have their own flavor for what they've done, there's no doubt that these are learner-centered, learner-driven, and community-based visions. And those being elevated to the priorities in terms of your purposes and your why, forces a redesigning, a rethinking, a reimagining what schools are. And I just love the innovation, all the different kind of catalytic synergy that really comes from these processes as we start to build and co-construct together. It's just very exciting as we can hopefully ping pong off each other as we all go to this field this way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alan. And so if you're sitting there thinking like, man, I missed the L3 vote, you don't need us to help you facilitate co-creation in your community. Of course, I say that knowing that we do have resources, tools, and ways to support you in doing that. So if this is ringing a bell for you, please connect with us, because we don't want this, as we're going to talk about, we don't want this work to be siloed in pockets of innovation across the state, right? We're not doing our jobs and the service to our communities and the education system if this stays only within the teams that are present in this room. So please connect with us on that or on any of the opportunities that we mentioned here today. And the third big idea that we mentioned was collaborating with communities. And again, we see examples of this every day, and there are more out there. You all are doing this work in the L3s. It's the piece where you are working in community with partners and stakeholders. Any family-friendly school certified folks working toward certification? Yeah, great. Wonderful. So you're collaborating with communities, right? Student internships, career pathways, that takes such deep partnership with your community. And so we're just excited to lift up the work that you are doing because it is happening and you are models and examples for the state of Kentucky in bringing this vision to life. So just as we wrap up our little conversation here, I wanted to pass it back to David. But first I want to celebrate the growth of this group. I think we almost doubled our membership back in just toward the beginning of the pandemic. And since 2020, we have grown by 9 new districts. So we are so glad that you have chosen to join this network. And so we are in a group among 42 districts across our state who really want to push and think forward and move to advance our education system. So we are just so proud of you, proud to be in this space with you, and thank you for what you've done for Kentucky and our learners. And so with that, though, we know that the work can't be held, as I mentioned, in 42 districts. That still makes us a bit of the minority here in terms of really pushing this work forward. And so I think it's a space of responsibility for us to spread, as I learned, I think in OVEC for their deeper learning launch last week. We have this tendency to say scale as if that is a very negative connotation, right? Scaling feels standardized, feels like we are expected to operate in the same ways. But instead, I'm choosing to see it now as a spread. How does this network spread its ideas, the work that you're doing, so that we increase that not by pockets of innovation across the state, but until we see those bright spots throughout the Commonwealth. So I will pass it over here to David just to give a plug now about how you might advance this work.
So this is the place where all of the cohesion conversation comes into place. And I created this really messy graphic that my communications team at KD is working on right now that shows us that all the work you guys are doing isn't siloed. And it can't be. You're doing deeper learning. Most of y'all, I think most everybody in the room is part of the deeper learning grant. Many of you, as we found out, are part of the PBL Works project, the math badging project, a few of you are. And I said something yesterday to the educational cooperative directors. I just said, just remember that whatever you're doing, you've asked yourself, I hope, before you started doing it, does this align to our district's vision? Does this align to our community's vision? So everything that we've talked about today should be doing that. You're sitting in this room because you want to hear from other districts about what they're doing that might be added to your district's vision. Part of this whole United We Learn process, and we're very thankful to the federal United States Department of Education who recently granted us a $3 million grant, which is really tied into the assessment and accountability part of this conversation, the policy that has to change, but most importantly, how do we learn about these new ideas that you all have when it comes to assessment, accountability, and learning? And how do we share those and have a conversation at the state level about how do we make it possible for those things to be real and to be sustainable and to be spreadable, like Sarah just said. During the first year of the United We Learn process, we had a thing called the Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education, with 60 plus stakeholders from around the state, and that represented every possible stakeholder group. Now, and we just recently released the application process for this, and we hope that some of you will either apply yourself or have people in your communities that will apply. We are forming the Kentucky United We Learn Council. And just to make it brief and to make it simplistic, I hope, the council's job is going to be to hear every idea that you all in any other district has, any district that's involved in deeper learning, any district that's involved in PBL Works, in the math badging project. That may be something that we need other people to hear. Because you're going to do some things in your work that are really specific to your district. But there are also going to be things that somebody can go, wow, I hadn't thought about that for my fourth-year graduate. I hadn't thought about that. So the council is going to be sort of that place where we talk about the three big ideas and how things fit across those things and what we do to move those up the chain if they feel like they are something that needs to be spread, as Sarah said. So there's the QR code and also Bitly, but if you are interested in participating in that council, again, about 60 people, and then the council will have subcommittees that will also ask for some additional help. So there'll be a lot of opportunities to participate in that, again, to get us a Kentuckians version of what we want, not something that we've established. So.
All right, Rob may pull us off the stage because he has an exciting new opportunity to bring specifically to your teachers. Many of you are here as district administrators, and we've heard from you that we need this space to exist for educators.
Thank you, Sarah and David. I'm trying to be cognizant of time. We have about 10 minutes left before our break, and I don't want to borrow too much time from Bobby and Education Reimagined. So I'll go over this rather briefly and quickly, but of course I'm available for any questions that you might have. So I mentioned earlier that the ILN is not necessarily an initiative itself. It's a network to advance and support and improve the work you're already doing. This is true. However, we do have one particular initiative that exists within the ILN that I'm incredibly excited for. At the end of last year, we had a feedback form where our districts gave us feedback on what we had been doing and what we needed. And something we saw a need for was connecting to on-the-ground teaching. So we are launching an innovative teacher cohort where 10 teachers from across our 42 districts will be selected, and they will go through the process of professional learning, of planning, of implementing, and reflecting and sharing on an innovative project in their classrooms. So they will really be connecting to the work that you're already doing, and really we plan to be on the cutting edge and being very innovative with the projects that we do implement and plan. I think a lot of times much of this work is connected to superintendents and chief academic officers, and it lives in that space quite often, right? But I think the most powerful place in any school is the classroom, and the most powerful people in any school and community are those teachers who take care of our kids every single day. And this is a way to connect to that. They will be presenting their projects and their reflections at the next in-person meeting we have, which will be in June. It's called the Exhibition of Innovation and Learning. I'll discuss that in just a moment, but I do want to plug applications are due next Friday on the 23rd. We still have a form that we've sent out that you can send to your teachers. If there's a particular teacher that you know does amazing work and you want them to be involved in this opportunity, please forward that to them so they can apply. We've already exceeded our 10 applications and they are of amazing qualities, but we'd like to see more roll in as well so we can have the strongest cohort we can manage. So after this is over, I will send this out again in our kind of overview recap email, which leads me on to our next in-person event is going to take place in the first 2 weeks of June. We are calling it an exhibition of innovation and learning. And what we thought of was the need not only to convene again in person, but to convene at the end of a year after we've put all of our effort and our passion into whatever work we're advancing, right? So this exhibition is going to be a space to share your learning and share the work that you have put in. It is going to be the ILN networks together. At the moment, we do not have a space because we wanted to make the offer. If there are any districts who are willing to and want to and have the capacity to host this event, we're making that offer to you. So if you'd like to connect with us later, much in the same way that Boone County offered up this amazing space, you also have the opportunity to share your space with us as well. Now, one thing I do want to be cognizant of, and I want to mention, you do not have to implement a new initiative in order to take part in this exhibition of innovation and learning. I know there's a lot of work going on right now. There are a lot of opportunities, and sometimes that can feel overwhelming. You can focus on the work that you are already doing to share. You do not have to choose something new and implement that from scratch. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at in the process, is a perfect place to highlight because we can learn from any of those moments through time. This also connects to the work of the Cole Council that Sarah and David just mentioned. It connects to the work of the Deeper Learning Grant, which most of you are involved in. And if Deeper Learning is students acquiring those content knowledge and those skills and applying them, the work that you're doing in your communities is already advancing that. And this will connect to that as well. So it's not something new. It's simply documenting what you're already doing. Now, it will include a presentation, which we're fairly flexible on the format of that, but a presentation to your peers on the work that you've been doing so that we can learn from each other, again, in that spirit of a network. So we thrive on your feedback. This is the general format that we have established and heard that works well, and we did adapt this from UK Next Gen and something similar to their exhibitions. I'm going to walk over this format with you really quickly, and I do want to make you aware that after this event is over, we will be sending out a feedback form where we invite your feedback on this particular format and this setting. And if there's anything you think should change or improve or shift, this event is by us, for our network. So you are going to be integral in shaping what we do at the event. So here's a general overview. You will choose whatever initiative you want to highlight and want to forward. I think it's helpful to either focus on the process or the product. So let's say you're in the midst of working in your L3 communities, but you're not there yet. It's okay to focus on the process that you've done thus far and where you're at. Or let's say you're a district that has completed your profile of a graduate and you have a polished product that you want to share. You're welcome to share that product and the thinking that went into it and what the final product itself is. We have some questions to guide your thinking. The first one, of course, is what is it? So what is this initiative? The next one, and probably the most important, is why. So what are our values that connect to this initiative? We have the question of how do you know it's working, or how will you know it's working if it's an event in progress? And of course, we learn from difficulty, we learn from challenges. What were the significant challenges, or what are the challenges, so that we can workshop that together? And of course, as we've mentioned, our unifying vision is the United We Learn, 3 big ideas, we are going to ask you to connect to those as well. So how does this create vibrant student experiences? How does this encourage innovation, especially in assessment? And how does it connect to communities and engage communities? I do want to note, whatever initiative you choose or opportunity you choose, it does not have to connect to all three of those big ideas in the same way, right? So it may privilege one over the other, and that's okay. But something tells me naturally they are all connected in a very cohesive and very natural way. Of course, as a presentation, you're documenting and including supporting media. So as you're working on this work, take photos, take videos. I think it's very powerful to survey students. If this is something that students are experiencing, you should collect that data from them and understand the student experience. All of these things will go into making a shared presentation space where we learn from each other and can advance the work we're doing together. And with that being said, I'm sure there are plenty of questions. We'll overview that a little bit later in the day. We actually have about 19 minutes. You've been sitting, so please take a moment, get up, stretch, get a drink, get coffee, get snacks. We'll see you at 9:30. So we are so excited today to have Dr. Bobby Mcdonald of Education Reimagined joining us. A large part of the purpose of the Kentucky ILN is professional learning and making partnerships with national organizations and national partners. And Bobby is a fantastic representative to discuss with us a vision for the future of learner-centered ecosystems. She has planned a keynote today and a fantastic activity for us. So we're about to kind of dig into the future we want for our students and our communities want. So without further ado, Dr. Bobby Mcdonald.
Here. Good morning, everyone. I don't know. Can I have them both? That's great. Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me out of this one? All right. Good morning.
It's so nice to be here with all of you. I think that just to shake it up and start in a new way, I'm going to sing to you. Just so that you're really sure it's not going to be like usual. All right, so the last time that I conducted a staff retreat at the schools I helped design and grew my children up in Baltimore, the teachers created a really great list of, the agreements of how we're going to be together. And I turned it into a song. Sorry I don't have my guitar with me, but I'm going to just try it out on you guys, just to shake it up. And also because I'm so nervous, I figured this would just make me not have to be nervous anymore if I'm actually going to sing. All right, let me try it. If I remember the list, it was, be present, reserve the right to change your mind. Don't dominate the conversation. Be bold, speak out, and tell your story. Learning happens anywhere and everywhere. Our work is honored. That's all I got there. All right. Okay, I can't get more nervous than that, right? So I feel like it's just going to get better. No, it's okay. I'm all right. Yeah. Okay, so I'd just like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name's Bobby Mcdonald, and I started out as an early childhood educator. So I'm really comfortable on the floor with lots of mess around me and little people doing stories and story enactments. And I come from a long line of educators and salesmen, so you might see some, like a little evidence of that in who I am. But then I became a mama and moved from south side of Chicago to Baltimore. And my learning experiences and teaching experiences started out at the Child Development Lab at the University of Illinois. So I kind of came to teaching as, from a research perspective, teacher as researcher of how children are thinking and how children are learning. That seemed like the normal way to approach teaching to me. And then at the University of Maryland Child Development Lab, I was supervising student teachers and really thinking about engaging an international community and families, and again, in that kind of constructivist, co-creating curriculum way. I also worked at some private schools, and then at some public schools, and then at some hospital daycares and Head Start. I just had this range of possibilities. And then I had babies of my own. Yay for having babies, it was wonderful. And when the youngest reached school age, I visited the school down my house in Baltimore City, down the street. And it was at the height of the No Child Left Behind. The teacher had a script, the kids weren't allowed to talk. And in Baltimore at that time, in that school, when kids walked in the hallway, they had to hold their arms like this and not talk. That was the state of that school at that time. And I thought, if I were a teacher in the school, I don't think I could influence it. I don't think I could change what's happening here. And if I were a principal in this school, I don't think I could do it. It felt overwhelming, and I went home and said to my husband, are we going to move out of the city, like to find good public schools? That's not the idea. You know, all the people in that building are the people I want to be with. They're my neighbors, black and white, like different ethnicities. The teachers were all trying to do their best. You know, it was just the system and the situation. And that was the night Maryland passed the charter school law, which I knew nothing about and had never even heard of. The idea that anyone could open a public school seemed completely insane to me. But when I woke up the next morning, I thought, oh, what if you could say, if we could have the best school you could imagine, what would it be? And so we started to gather the neighbors and gather folks and ask that question. And they came up with some great stuff: project-based learning, arts integration, Reggio Emilia inspired, a family teacher cooperative. And we put in it had to kind of do a big battle, but eventually we got to open the first school, and then another school, 2K to 8s, and then City Neighbors High School. And with the high school, we said, what would it take for every student to be known, loved, and inspired? And if you know, in Baltimore, there's a lot of poverty. Kids were coming from 60 different middle schools across the city. We really thought for the high school, we had to be more specific. And we created home bases in the school. We had 39 living rooms and an advisory system. And so, but the mission wasn't just, I believe I'm getting somewhere, so stick with me, please. The mission wasn't just about starting a couple good schools. The mission was always public education. And so we created a City Neighbors Foundation to positively impact public education. And over those 20 years, I worked with 7 different superintendents to really partner. We created coalitions to fight for proper funding for all public schools. We created coalitions to get more money for facility investment because the facilities were in such bad repair. And during that time, and through all of that work, it was a lot of my job, starting, I was teacher, school leader, board member, executive director, was to hold the system right here so that we could do the kind of work we knew kids needed and families needed. And it always seemed like such a dream to be in a system like the kind that you're creating, where you don't have to be holding it at bay, but the system itself wants to do that kind of work. So when I look out at all of you guys and hear about the stuff you're doing, to me, it just seems like this amazing dream to have systems thinking together and really taking a stand for listening and connecting to the people who are engaged, your families, your children, your teachers, all of us. So I just wanted to thank you for that and tell you a little bit about my story. So I'm going to tell you also about Education Reimagined, because I'm here to share with you what we've learned in hopes that it will spark some ideas, ignite new thinking, create space for exploration, calibration, and action in service of transformational change in education, both nationally and in our local contexts. That's a lot of words on that one. But Education Reimagined has been for the past 10 years working to build the learner-centered field. And we're doing that in 3 ways. One is catalyzing invention, finding resources and investment and building communities of practice with folks who are learner-centered and are doing this work. We're also spreading the vision, illuminating and documenting great works, because learner-centered education is happening in pockets all across the United States. And then also just building that field, shared language, really important, because if we're not meaning the same thing when we say learner-centered, that makes it difficult to build the field. So today I'm going to share with you our vision, and also have a chance to play with you and do some inventing and creating. But before we do that, we do something at Education Reimagined just called Getting Connected. And what I'd love to do is ask you to get connected at your tables. And let me just do this. Share a learning experience outside of your formal education that was really powerful for you. And then make sure you also say why it mattered. So I'm going to give you time. Everybody will make sure everyone gets a chance. Think about a learning experience you had outside of formal education that really mattered. And if someone forgets to say why it mattered to them, just go ahead and prompt them to do that, because that's where our commitments and values really show up. But let's take, we're going to take, I think we have some big tables. So we're going to take 10 minutes, make sure everyone has a chance and answer this question, and then we'll come back together as a group. All right? So let's get connected. Thanks, everyone. Okay, let's come back together then. I hope that was a good chance to connect as human beings at your table. And it's always important that you're having a chance to connect us in smaller groups, to have a chance to reconnect in a larger group. So could we just hear out from a few people, not a summary of what was said, but what struck you in your conversation? What did you notice at your table from listening to folks of the experiences they had and why it mattered to them? Would anyone be willing to share? Yeah.
The biggest thing we found was that all these experiences were extremely personal experiences. That the learning was a body moment to a parent or it's a family moment. They were all experiences that were very personal, and that was kind of why, because it had depth because it was personal.
I think Rob.
Yeah, I'll walk the line.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah. Who else? What else did you notice? What struck you? Yeah.
Before it was shared, I think we came back to the word experience. We get James learning to applying, or attempting to learn to applying. Cassie, a hay baler experience in Todd County. Yeah. And, me trying to learn to drive a dump truck up to Ideal Supplies when I'm 16-year-old, probably blew every gear in their box, But we came back to that word. It was an experience. And often our kids don't experience learning. It's just kind of put upon them. So that was our takeaway.
Yeah.
Our table kind of did some of the same things, talking about personalized experience. One of the things we did notice, or I noticed between all of our experiences, they were individualized more than in a group setting. We also talked about sometimes learning can be painful. So one of my things I thought, it wasn't special to me, some of the things I learned outside of school because it was about mistakes. And then we said, well, maybe that's something that's important. Giving our kids the ability to make a mistake and learn from it without being embarrassed. But my personal story was, a member of 4-H since I was in 4th grade, and that was I learned so much outside of school. But their motto was learning by doing, and we talked about all of us had an experience, but it is the actual participation in the experience and doing the thing that we were learning that made it stick with us, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah. And last call. Anyone else want to share what struck you at your table? Sarah?
Something that came up for me that I hadn't thought of was, we talked about athletic experiences and how the skills that we learn as athletes growing up. And then it was brought up at our table, the symmetry of the adult learning and the coaching role, and how powerful an learning experience that was. And I don't know if many of us are ever formally trained to coach a school-based team, but I just thought it spoke to kind of, as we've been learning, symmetry between the powerful learning that happens not only when you're growing up as a student, but in those adult spaces as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. So the personal, the experiences, the doing, and then also just that chance, the connecting of being able to share with people of different ages, the coaching. Thank you. That's great. And just, it's interesting how, even though we were all split up into small groups, a lot of it resonates across all of the groups. So just reconnecting as a whole group. And thank you for sharing things that were important to you and that are part of your stories. And, imagine, and it's so nice to be together, isn't it? After not being together, it just feels good. And I think, I'm sure the kids are longing for this as well, a chance to share their precious stories and the names of the people who they care about and the things that they're working on. So thank you for that. I'll declare us connected and keep moving. Can't find this. So, oh, I'm so awkward up here. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna get better. Education Reimagined is really seeking to build the learner-centered movement. We came together 10 years ago, as I mentioned, with a really diverse group of folks who normally wouldn't be together, and said, let's put down the things that divide us just for a moment. You can always pick them back up, and really talk about how we see children and what teaching and learning could look like if we see children as powerful, capable, loving, worthy of the deepest respect. And we came up with a vision for learner-centered education. And then we started to really build community and go visit sites and learn from practitioners and other people in the community that were already studying this and had been studying it deeply for a long time. And the vision continued to grow and expand, and we created a lexicon of language and distinctions. And we kept gathering people. We have a community called the Learning Lab that does immersive learning experiences and other workshops to continually iterate on this vision. And that's what I'm about to share with you. But we really seek to transform education and not reform. And the reason we say that is because that, and you know better than anyone how deep the system we have is resistant to change, that legacy system. And so we really have to go deep to make that change. So I'm going to share that vision with you, and I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything important. Okay, I feel like we're good. All right, so our vision of education, learner-centered. So what do we mean by learner-centered education? We say it's a worldview. I'm going to switch mics, hold on. And I'm going to settle down. Okay. It's a mindset or a lens that we put on that opens up a whole new way to see learners, learning, and the purpose of education. So here are some of the assumptions of the learner-centered worldview. The work of education is learning and not the delivery of education. The purpose of education is for each young person to discover who they are, their unique gifts, and how to contribute those gifts meaningfully to the world. The work of education is learning, as I said. Education is done by and with the learner. All learners are unique, capable, curious, and wondrous. Learning happens when a learner's interests, passions, and purpose are engaged. And then what we did was we realized there are pockets of learner-centered education happening across the United States and globally, and they exist in different formats. You know, it could be a school, it could be a district, it could be out of school time, homeschooling, unschooling, cooperatives. They're examples of every age of learners, even higher ed, and in vastly different community context, but it isn't available to every child yet. So when one looks at education through this lens and begins to create learning environments for these learners, the structures will look very different from today's conventional schools. And the people in this room know that better than most, because you are actually experimenting and trying and growing new structures. We developed a tool called the Immersive Learning Exchange, and using this tool, we visited and studied learning environments created by learner-centered practitioners. And we've seen invariably that they share these 5 elements. So I just want to share with you what we figured out about these 5 elements. Cultivating learner agency. And by agency, we mean learning is the work of learners and learning is purposeful. It cannot be done to people or for them. They develop confidence in who they are and take more and more responsibility to determine their own unique learning pathways. And just to give an example, when I was in Baltimore, and I told you we created this high school where our goal was to make every student known, loved, and inspired. I'm just going to tell a quick story to illuminate this. I was in a district group that was investigating climate, school climate, which in Baltimore was a very big thing to be working on. And they asked, you know, around our table, how do you measure school climate? And people had a list of detentions, interactions with the hall monitors, fights, things like that. And when it got to my turn, I had to say, we actually measure the level of independence our kids show in the hallways. And it's hard to measure that because we don't use hall monitors. We use the hallways as extensions of the classrooms. But we were talking across paradigms. We were really talking across paradigms. And I thought, I don't actually know if I'm actually being helpful in this group. You know, how can I be helpful in this conversation if we're coming, and it's the same kids, by the way, the same Baltimore City public kids, same teacher's contract, all of that. But that didn't stop me. I stayed on the committee and we did a lot of visits back and forth and working, but really thinking about agency in terms of what kids are really being asked to do and are allowed to do. Just pushing the thinking on that a little bit. Learning is socially embedded. Relationships are the foundation, and learning is relational among learners, adults, and the broader community. They allow each person to be recognized for who they are, their gifts, and the difference they want to make in the world. And I know when you were telling your stories of learning, there were a lot of community embedded experiences that sounded wonderful. Making sure that learning is personalized, relevant, and contextualized. We mean that each learner's unique interests, backgrounds, lived experiences, needs, circumstances, and aspirations is the starting point for their learning. It's not just personalized because learning is on a self-paced curriculum. Learning is personal to who learners are, where they've been, and where they'd like to go. What might that really look like? Making learning open wall. The community and the world are the playground for learning. Learning isn't restricted to a single building or counted only because it's assigned by a teacher. Learning is recognized as happening all the time with lots of people and all over the place. And where that learning and those experiences happen is thoughtfully organized and legitimized, leveraging the resources, wisdom, and assets of the physical locality and the virtual world. This one's so interesting because, like you mentioned with the 4-H club, we already know this, and we already know that learning happens everywhere. And there's lots of folks who have been creating learning experiences for kids or welcoming learning happening with kids, intergenerational kinds of opportunities, or just real work work that needs to happen that involves people in the community. But how does a district or a system embrace this and actually give credit and say this is a valid part of what we do and we're going to grow this? That's what we've been exploring with folks. And then finally, learning is competency-based. As opposed to being grades and memorization-based learning, children have an opportunity to demonstrate what they can do and know in relevant ways that are a match for their unique goals, skills, and capacities. So when all 5 elements are interconnected, they enable and reinforce one another. And for learner-centered to be fully realized, we found that all 5 elements need to be fully realized. So obviously these 5 elements are not meant to be a rigid blueprint implemented. Instead, they're just a North Star to guide us, something to look toward, to think more deeply about, to ask ourselves about. And that's how we're offering them up to you today for your consideration. So one of the things we noticed during the pandemic, one of the things we noticed during the pandemic, of course, and you all noticed it too, was what happened when our systems shut down. And for a lot of families, learning was at home. Some folks, at first we were all so afraid. We didn't even know if we should see each other. We've all been through this. It was a hard time for everyone, and there was a lot of isolation and fear and difficulty. But people also started to find ways to connect, to create learning experiences, to find and do what we could for each other. And we really started to think about changing the way we're talking about it, not just of the 5 elements needing to be present, but aren't we actually thinking of an ecosystem, a system that operates on the principles of a living system? Instead of fixed, there's some fluidity. Instead of parts, there's a wholeness to it. Just like a real ecosystem, the system itself is responsive to what's happening in it. It goes through stages. I'm not describing like utopia or everything's perfect when I'm talking about an ecosystem. We know at schools, lots happen in families' lives when you gather together to raise your children over time, and in teachers' lives, and in all of our lives. So it's more like what system would be resilient enough to hold us during those times and to give us a chance to thrive if each part of the system could thrive. So the question is, what would it take for a learner-centered education to be fully demonstrated, sustainable, and available for every child? There we go. And I'd like to share with you a 4-minute video that shows one possible way to envision a thriving ecosystem. And then I'm going to ask for your reflections and thoughts on what possibilities you see in this vision. And to date, in talking about transforming education, we've meant transforming schools and districts, but rather we see a future where learning is not limited to single buildings. And we see the possibility of public education being community-based ecosystems of learning. I want to ask you, at the beginning of this video, it kind of puts in opposing places, the traditional system does this. The new possibility is this. It might trigger you or make you feel like, damn it all, why do we have to do it that way? I just want to acknowledge that and just go ahead and feel whatever you're feeling. But after that moment, just give a try of what this vision is and see what it brings up for you. I'm going to just ask you to choose one question to explore at your table. What strikes you about what learner-centered community-based ecosystems could make possible? Why does that matter to you? What's one possibility that excites you? What do you notice is valued in a community-based ecosystem approach? Or if you have something else another question, then ask that. But 5 minutes, just go ahead and have a conversation. What came up for you at your table? Thank you. All right, coming back together. Thank you. Oops. There we go. Well, it sounds like you're having great conversations. Great conversations at your tables. And I'm really interested in your thoughts on this vision for ecosystems, but I want to say that we know that, of course, each context is unique, and that each context would define for themselves what their ecosystem looks like. In fact, I think that's the work that you are already engaged in. And the principles, the three ideas that you have of United We Learn, which is the, let me say it, vibrant student learning, family and student engagement, and what's the?
Innovation and assessment.
Innovation and assessment. Those are such deep, strong levers for actually creating a shared vision for ecosystems. And that's partly why I'm drawn to your work, and I wanted to share this with you to hopefully provoke and inspire and ignite more thinking from all of you. So my job is to catalyze invention and to find places that want to do demonstrations of ecosystems and help in any way we can with resources, with investment, with community practice, whatever it is. And that's why I'm here today to share this with you and to help, of course, build the learner-centered field. But we don't think that this is the only answer or the right answer or the way it has to be. This is just what has come to us through the work we've done these past 10 years. And if you go on the website, we have a lot of more little videos like that, like from a student's perspective, from a parent's perspective, from a teacher's perspective, from a learning facilitator. Check it out. And if you want to reach out, please do to share anything that you want. But what I'd love to do right now is, unless someone has a burning desire to share something you just talked about, does anyone have that? Because I'm open. Are you guys okay? All right, then we get to play. Yeah, we get to go back to the future. So what we're going to do now is an activity that we call Back to the Future. And this exercise requires that we toggle between the past, the present, and the future, envisioning and working from a future that fully honors every child, while also acknowledging what must be dealt with to get there. Because that is the hard part, isn't it? Thinking about how will we get there? So the way it begins is Sarah and Rob are going to pass out these papers. Each table will have a chart paper, and we're going to put all these papers up so that we can see each other's work and share. But there's three parts. We're going to go to the future, we're going to go to the past, and then we're going to go to the present. So part one. Envision the future and thoroughly describe what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like having fully transformed education in the U.S. to be learner-centered. This is your chance to dream and imagine without constraint. You don't have to think about how you get there. You just get to say, what would be amazing? What would be incredible? For example, you could say, young people are active in the community, contributing to businesses, planting community gardens, hosting workshops. Adults are regularly learning from and with children. So do not describe how it happened. Focus on what you see and hear. If someone in your group starts saying, it would be great if, say, no, talk in the present tense. I see children and adults interacting. I see kids knowing what careers they want because they had a chance to try them out. Say in the present tense. You have 8 minutes, and this is, the first part is the future. Okay, so write the future, and then just bullet point, brainstorm, 8 minutes. What would be amazing? The future of education. Let's say the year is 2060. It's way out there, 2060. It's so far. All right, 8 minutes, folks. Give it a try. Please design and think about the future. All right. Let's go ahead and move to the second section, if I could have your attention just for a moment. Okay, lots of good generating of ideas, and now we're going to go to part 2. For those of you who are joining virtually, feel free to engage in the assignment. You might need a new piece of paper for this next part. All right, so we've been in the future, and we've seen all that can be. Now we're going to look back from that projected future and describe how the past, which is actually the present, looks. So, speak in the past tense.
In this next part, part 2, you're going to speak in the past tense about the challenges you have right now for getting where we are to that future. So, I remember when children do standardized tests. I remember when we used to see kids in rows for hours on end. I remember when teachers used to fight for their rights in union contracts as an ongoing battle. I remember when we had to, I can't think of it right now. What else did we have to do?
Come in at 7 and we did too.
Say that?
Come in at 7 and we did too.
I remember when we had to come in at 7 and leave at 2 o'clock. Yeah. I remember when all the community things were called out of school time. Okay? Part 2, I remember when describes now. 8 minutes. Thank you. After we do part 3, we'll have a chance to share out a little bit for a few groups, but let's go on to part 3. Identify and list the questions we had to answer that we couldn't answer at the beginning in order to get to the future. Be as honest and specific as possible. An example of a question: how can we fund education to ensure that every child of all backgrounds and circumstances has meaningful learning experiences and resources? How did we capture the learning in the community? How do we handle transportation? What are all the questions we have to answer to get to that future that we described? So just list questions. List the questions that you would have to answer to get from where we are, what we remember, to that future that we created. So please go ahead and work. You have another 8 minutes. Really think about the questions we have to answer. Thank you.
All right, time to come back together. Excellent.
Okay. Folks, I see lots of great work happening, but it's all right if you want to come back to your tables and sit down. We're going to wrap this up in a very, very brief debrief, and I'm going to close out and then turn it back over to Sarah to welcome Commissioner Glass. So, who's here? All right. I'd love to hear out just briefly from a couple folks. What inspires you most about the future you're committed to? That's one of my questions. And then, what struck you about your small group conversation? What struck you about this work that you just did? You imagined that future. You thought about, remember when, and then what questions we had to answer to get there. Just to hear from a couple people. What struck you about your conversation? What inspired you the most?
This is less about our conversation, but more about the conversations going on around us. This is a room of dreamers and yesers rather than no, we can't because, or we have to ask permission for, or I don't know if the taxpayers would go for that. I think it's important to keep thinking about possibilities and the transformations that can happen rather than the barriers and all the reasons that we can't.
Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
I think for us, it was freedom. Just the freedom to break out of the constraints of, do we have enough money? Do we have enough time? Do we have teachers with certifications? Do we even have teachers that will come teach for us? You know, that is our everyday, and everything gets pushed to the back burner so much.
Yeah.
That it's a disservice to the educational process because of those constraints. So to just, I don't even think again when we started, we knew how to see what it looked like because freedom was just so far removed from us because of everything else that we have to do.
Yeah.
And assessments are our biggest constraints, and it's our biggest constraints on teachers. We've talked a lot in my high school about doing project-based learning, and the course I have to push them away from all the time is pacing guides and accountability and what's that going to look like and what's going to happen to us if this happens. So, you know, I think our big thing was just the freedom for kids to want to go to school and learn.
Love it. So the dreaming and freedom to dream, freedom to allow ourselves to do that. One more? Yeah.
Our big question was, how do we educate state legislators and other people who influence education? Because we have all these expectations over our head, or our superintendent is here with us because he wants to do all of this, but then he has his expectations, but we don't make those decisions. So how do they? I feel like those people need to hear this presentation and everything. How do we do that?
Yeah. And thank you for that. And yeah, obviously that resonated with a lot of people in the room. And just so you know, there are people across the nation who are joining that learner-centered movement. You're not alone. And just like you, folks at the state level and the federal level, they feel those constraints too. But this is the time, now more than ever, when we can say, let's talk about what we really want, the future we really want, and let's talk about how we can get to that future. And that's what you've already been working on in your own communities, starting with what you have and what you know and the people that are around you. So I'm just gonna say, first of all, why don't you give yourselves a round of applause? That was wonderful. And please, when we're done, you know, let's put up all of these and do a gallery walk and look at the aspirations and all that you've identified. So as we've mentioned, I'm just going to give 1 minute of closing out with you, okay? As we've mentioned, there are pockets of learner-centered schools and communities that capture pieces of this holistic vision. And it's important to acknowledge that we're all operating in these unique contexts. In states that have built narratives around education for generations. And you are a part of that work. You are building a narrative right now by being part of the Learning Innovation Network. And it's beautiful. So this is about each of us becoming known for who we are, creating an environment so children can live a meaningful life and contribute to themselves, to the society and the world. So thank you all for your participation and engagement this morning. Thank you for being dedicated and working so hard for children and families here in Kentucky. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to sing with you, to dream with you, to play with you, and work alongside you. And I've had a wonderful time. If anyone has further questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm from Education Reimagined. And now I'm going to turn it back over to David. And thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Bobby. Great time figuring some of this stuff out. I now want to take this opportunity to introduce the chief learner of the Kentucky Department of Education. My friend and boss, we've known each other quite a while. We used to do this in 2 different states when we first started all this work, but every day I'm excited about what we're doing with you all today as one of the activities, because we have a leader who sees the vision. He was visionary enough to ask the Kentuckians to give us the vision from the very beginning, and now we're playing it out, and we're playing it out through this group, through the deeper learning work, all of it. And I just want everyone to know that we have a person who is fighting for everything we're talking about today. And we should be thankful that we do have that right now at this time in the world, that we have somebody who wants to fight for all the things you guys have been talking about this morning, about freedom and about all those things. So give a warm welcome to my boss, Dr. Jason Glass.
Hi, good morning. It's delightful to see all of you and to go around and hear about some of the ideas that you're talking about. It's just exciting that you're looking ahead, thinking ahead, and I want to acknowledge how far so many communities, so many schools that are represented here in this room are already on, how far you already have come toward the vision really Kentuckians gave us for what they wanted for the future of education. When I decided to apply for the commissioner role here in Kentucky, it was because we had decades of work and capacity around this kind of deeper learning that was already present here. And so it was a place that I really felt was at a tipping point, and even more so now, where the kinds of changes for students that you are envisioning in the work that you're doing, it's parts of it are already happening, and it's ready to happen at scale now here in the state, more so than any place in the country that I'm aware of. When I returned to Kentucky to take on this role, we didn't come in, or I didn't come in with sort of a canned, preconceived notion of what our vision should be. We really did take the time to listen to Kentuckians and ask them what were their aspirations for the future of the state and their children. And our schools, and also about their experiences. What were some of your experiences as a learner, both positive and negative? So through all of that listening, we conducted around 1,200 participants. Really gave us interview information about their experiences in our schools and their aspirations going forward. We took all of that data. We had another group that we called the Coalition for Advancing Education analyze it. They conducted even more interviews in their community. And out of that emerged the United We Learn report that I think you've been talking about. United We Learn brings forth three big ideas that I think you've also been interacting with. The first among those is bring vibrant, meaningful, authentic, connected learning experiences for students. And so we put that first because I think it's actually the most important and most difficult change that we need to bring about. It recognizes that the world has changed dramatically from the kind of education that a lot of us received. And it's being driven by instant access to information, increased artificial intelligence, and that's going to just keep getting faster and be all around us, and the interconnection of the economy and the world in ways that we even right now have a hard time comprehending what that's going to be like. Today is as slow as it's going to get. The world is just going to keep accelerating and getting faster. And so we have to think about how we can change the experiences of our students to prepare them for that fast moving world. So that first big idea around changing the student experience, I think has to be our foundational point of change. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to release the state assessment results. And they're going to be what you expect. They're going to be disappointing compared to historical numbers. And they're going to reflect largely some of the data that we've seen in the national assessment. And they're going to show that our kids struggled through the pandemic with content, with basic foundational reading and mathematics, and with engagement. So that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody when we see that. But you're probably going to have about anywhere from 4 to 24 hours of hyper panic in the state as that comes out. And then that's going to subside, and all of you are going to go back to work. But what I encourage you to do and how to think about when those results come out. Yes, content knowledge, foundational literacy, and numeracy are critically important. They're really important so that our students are able to engage in deeper learning. But we don't do our kids any favors if we hyper-focus on foundational content at the expense of engagement. Because part of what we're capturing with these declines in results is a crisis of student engagement. Our kids were, if anything, hyper disengaged over the past 2 years. And some of the work that we have to do is think about ways to have them fall in love with school and fall in love with learning. And we can have it all. We can teach foundational literacy and numeracy. We need to teach foundational literacy and numeracy. We do have to approach that work urgently and make sure that we're catching our kids up in those foundational areas that they missed. And we have to think about how can we do that in a way that engages them and prepares them for the world that they're going to inherit. Some of you have heard me talk about my maternal grandfather, Joe Willis Wilson Howell. And Joe Howell was a tobacco farmer in Metcalfe County. And at the beginning of his career, he literally started plowing that red dirt behind a mule. And at the end of his life, he was driving his Chevrolet pickup truck on an interstate highway system. So that's the change that he saw in one lifetime. So when you go home and you look in the eyes of the 3 and the 4 and the 5-year-olds that are in your preschools and your kindergartens, imagine what the world is going to be like when they're retiring, when they're 60, when they're 80, and they're likely to live past 100. How much the world is going to change. It's hard for us to even wrap our brains around what it's going to be like. But I can almost guarantee you that I can guarantee you it's going to be faster than it is right now. It's going to be more interconnected than it is right now. And content is going to matter. Foundational literacy and numeracy is going to matter. But what's going to matter even more is passion and collaboration and connection with others and being able to stand and deliver and communicate in a meaningful way. Those things are going to matter a heck of a lot more. I think that the work that's happening in districts and in classrooms has to go down to, we call it the micro level. Too often at the state, we focus on macro level things. So we talk about funding systems and accountability systems and testing cut points and school choice systems and governance, who gets to make decisions, and all those things are important. We can talk about them. But if we aren't really changing what the student is experiencing, the micro level question, if we aren't really changing that and in a way that prepares that child for the future that they're going to step into, it's not really different. We haven't really changed anything. So that is the big challenge. Change the experiences of our students. And I think we can do that through teaching content, through exposing students to content. One of the ways that we go about that is thinking about the tasks that we assign to students. Greg Sutton is here, and he and I went to high school together in a wonderful community in Meade County. It was a great place to grow up, great place to be a kid, and a great school system. But a lot of the experiences that we had were pretty traditional, and it was a lot of memorization. I can remember one of our teachers, who will go unnamed, wonderful person. They had this amazing piece of education technology. It had a light bulb and a magnifying glass. Do you remember that thing, right? And so some of the tasks that we did were to copy exactly what was on the screen into our notebook and then be graded on that. Or some days, copy full pages out of the textbook into our notebooks and then be graded on that. Those kinds of tasks are not very useful. They weren't useful to us then as kids. They certainly aren't useful to us now, and they're not going to be useful going forward. So things that are repetitive in nature, things that are purely content focused in nature, the utility of that just has an incredible diminishing return. So when we think about the tasks that we give students, how can we have them learn facts and foundational information, and at the same time ask them to solve a problem that's important to them? Ask them to collaborate with others and give a meaningful presentation, or communicate something, or write something persuasive. How can we ask them to design something new? Most of the problems that I deal with as a commissioner, as a parent, as a husband, as a citizen, they are not problems that I can solve with simple solutions. They're not problems that come to me and the problem only has 4 possible answers and I choose one of the 4. Most of the problems that I deal with, that you deal with, that our kids are going to increasingly deal with, don't have easy answers. They have damn hard choices that you have to make and consequences associated with those choices. So I think that the work that we have to do is create the kind of meaningful, complex learning interactions that our kids are going to have to do when they leave our schools. Try to think about how we can change their experiences in school to be like that. One more thing, and then I'll let you get back to work. A colleague that Kentucky is now working with is a professor at Harvard named Joel Mehta, and a few years ago he wrote a book called In Search of Deeper Learning, where he looked all over the country and in several places around the world for examples of the kinds of learning that you're working on right now. And honestly, the book's conclusion is he didn't find very many, even in places that purported to have these kinds of deeper learning experiences. A lot of it was pretty surface. But where he found a lot of it was in the experiences that students have outside of the traditional classroom or outside of the bells. So the kinds of connected, relational, deep, sticky, like it stuck with the students, experiences that they had were in things like sports and clubs and extracurriculars and music and things in the community. Those experiences stuck with kids. And the adults that he talked to, they relayed that those kinds of experiences were much more meaningful to them. So how can we think about the experiences kids have that are quote unquote extracurricular? What makes those sticky? What makes those meaningful? And how can we make the experiences that kids have between the bells more like that? Some of the best examples of deeper learning that I have ever seen came from art, music, physical education, teachers, because it's performance-based, it's experiential. You have to stand and deliver. We had an incredible choir teacher when I was at Meade County High School, and you talk about accountability. When Mrs. Jones asked you to stand and sing your part in front of 100 of your peers, that's accountability, right? That's pressure, more so than on any test that I ever had. So those kinds of experiences are what we have to think about retooling. Another great example of deeper learning that I've seen is go visit people that work in career technical programs or educators that work in alternative education programs. For career technical education programs, they have an instant connection to the world and can have kids experience experiential education in a real and meaningful way. And then our educators that work in alternative education programs, they sort of know that if I approach this with a traditional mindset, these kids are going to eat me alive. And so you have to bring it. You have to bring something meaningful. You have to approach it in a different way. And so I think you can find these kinds of examples in all of your communities, places where you can see the deeper learning. If you go back to Joel Mehta's question, in search of deeper learning, if we look, it's there. You have people that are already doing it. You have people that are already excelling at it. So how do you identify them, connect them, support them, help bring the kinds of learning that they're already doing to scale in your communities? The last thing that I'll say is thank you. I am deeply grateful for the work that you do in your communities, for your kids, for your community, for your colleagues. I know these past couple of years have been really challenging, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Again, these assessment results that are going to come out are going to reveal that we have some significant work to do, and we knew that. We knew that. So after the 4 hours of panic, it will subside, and we'll go back to work. And we're going to work our way out of this. Our kids are resilient. Kentucky's kids are as smart as any kids anywhere in the world, and we can do this. Thank you very much, and I'll let you get back to work. I have no idea what I'm supposed to hand off this to, so thank you. All right.
All righty, thank you again, Commissioner, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Edna, is it? Hi.
Well, thank you. And we're going to keep Sarah walking because I saw she was running over there to bring you the microphone just as you finished. And I came up here so you wouldn't have to run all the way back to here, Sarah. Thank you. So the question really is around how do we change educator preparation programs to match this kind of change? Edna, I think your leadership in that has been really helpful, pulling together the deans of the colleges of education around the state. And my sense is that there's a willingness from them to do this kind of work. I think when we talk about the kinds of shifts in learning that y'all are working on today, it's why most of us got into education, was to teach like this. I see a lot of our instructors or educators who are still using traditional stand and deliver methods, and maybe they're doing that because it's what they're used to, or it's what they were taught to do. It's what they experienced themselves. There's an important concept that Jal Mehta and his colleague John Watkins talk about in synergy. And synergy has all sorts of meanings, but in this context, what they mean is the experiences that adults have and the experiences that we want to see students have a connection. There's a synergy. Part of the problem is that the adults don't know what it means when we talk about deeper learning or authentic experiences or something in a formal school setting. They haven't experienced that themselves. And so it's hard for them to make that leap. So I think when it comes to the work that we do as adults, those of you in here that are leading professional learning in some form in your districts or in higher education, you have to think about, how can I replicate and model what deeper learning looks like for the adults, and so that they've got a better idea of how to do that for our students. So I think, Edna, honestly, there's a willingness to bring this kind of change. I am willing to work with and run with all of those that want to make that shift, and I think Kentucky's at a tipping point for that. But for all of us, I think we have to support our adult learners in seeing and experiencing the same kinds of shifts that we want to bring about for kids. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know this was going to be a Q&A, so here we go. Yeah.
Dr. Glass, I think you bring up an excellent point, though, about our exhibition that Ron was doing a wonderful job planning for us at the end of the year. I think that's a fantastic opportunity to not keep that work in this circle, right? The most powerful learning is going to be when you expose new communities, people on the edge of thinking about their work differently, to your ideas and the work that you're doing. But I think, to Dr. Glass's point, they have to be engaged. The meaningful experiences that you reflected on were that way because you experienced something different. And so just think about in your own communities and context how you can engage adults so that they see something different. They have to experience it to move forward as well.
So Sarah, sometimes, and I think it sort of was implicit in Edna's question, it's sort of, what do you do with the curmudgeon, right? The people that they don't want to do this, they don't think it's a good idea, they're resistant. And I don't know the exact answer to that, but I'll tell you how I approach it. I don't care about them because I have enough people that want to do this. And that's who I'm going to expend my time and energy working with. And for those that don't, just do whatever you want then. But I think there's enough energy and there's enough recognition that these kinds of learning shifts need to happen. The evidence of it is right here in this room. That we should run with the people that want to run. And eventually we'll get there. And as in my time as a superintendent, I learned this the hard way. Like, you expend a hell of a lot of energy trying to convince people that they're not going to be convinced. And I'm just not doing that with this effort, right? I'm not trying to convince people that you need to do that. If you want to see why we need to make these shifts, then look out any damn window and see what's happening in the world right now and the trends that are happening at an increasing pace that require more than a content-focused and repetitively focused task education. That's the evidence that we need. So if you can't see that, then just sit there. But we're going to move with the people that want to move. Okay, thank y'all very much.
Okay, thank you again, Dr. Glass, for that impromptu Q&A. Edna, thank you for the question. It was very valuable discussion. We have 10 minutes until lunch, so I think I'm going to adjust what we're doing just a little bit and ask you to consider some of the rich discussion we've just had. And I'm going to ask you to, as you leave for lunch, to really take a time to do a gallery walk, to look at all the ideas that we have up on the walls. It's actually amazing to see all of this effort that you put in. So here's my request of you. You just spent time imagining the future that you value and the future that you want in your communities. Now, the really empowering thing about that is that you are the folks that have the power to make that happen, or you are the folks that have the ability to facilitate that in your communities to make that future a reality. And hopefully not by 2060. Hopefully we can get there a little sooner. So here's my request. Think about the futures you imagined at your tables together. And I want you to consider the work that you are doing right now. How is the work you're doing right now bringing about that future? How is the work that you're committed to at this moment bringing about that future that you imagined for 2060? So discuss that at your tables. After you're done discussing that, I'll give you time to get up and walk around and gallery walk at all these great ideas. We're not going to debrief on that particular section. So I'll just go ahead and tell you, once you've done your discussion at your table, once you've taken time to look around the room and gallery walk, we'll give you a little bit of an early dismissal to go out into the community. We will reconvene here promptly at 12:45, okay? So have those discussions, gallery walk, thank you. Oh, sorry, Alan.
Will all the stuff be captured by you all?
Yes, I'm scanning it all and I'll send all of this to you. Yes. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start back. So I hope that you had a great tour. I did hear from many that they gave 5-star reviews to their tour guide. And as I said, every tour we give, that's what we hear. They own the place. I'll share. I had an opportunity prior to coming to Boone County to start and be at the ground floor of iLead Academy. And so when I came to Boone and Dr. Poe said, here's some tasks with Ignite that I want you to see, I hadn't even stepped foot in the place. And it was still under construction, about finished. And I remember I walked in and I was like, now iLead, we served 35 kids, I think, the first year out of those 5 counties that it serves. And we were in a Kawasaki dealership in a strip mall. And so I walk into this place and I go, oh man. And I remember walking up to the upstairs and looking out at the vastness of this and thinking about the space and the students that we were going to serve. And I think I texted Dr. Poe and just went, wow. Wow. It's incredible. And to see where we are 4 years later from that point is phenomenal. And the scholars that are leaving here and the students are just exceptional. While you all were touring, I got to catch up with a freshman that I met my first year over here. He's going to IU to play soccer. And I talked to him about what are you going to do and what's going on? And he said, well, I might go to IU and play soccer. They've offered me this, this, and this. But I don't know if I want to play soccer. I want to study politics. He goes, I want to be a lawyer and I want to study about international law and in particular immigration. He's Hispanic. And he goes, and I want to go to Texas and serve, and that's where I want to work. He said, so I have to really make up my mind what I want to do. Now, as a freshman, the first time I met him, the young man was in trouble. He got after school something for talking and running and doing some things. But to sit and listen to him articulate what he wanted to do. And he didn't come to us exceptional student. I believe the culture, the environment, the expectations that they have for students as I said, those weren't cherry-picked students. Every student from their freshman year on have to give tours. I remember walking in one day and saying, I'm going to give a tour to this company. And Dr. Whitus, then a co-principal, looked at me and she said, Bill, we love you. Appreciate that you want to give the tour, but our students do that. It's their ownership. This is their place. And you can see that by the diversity that we have in our student population. So I wanted to open it up for Q&A. Dr. Webb and Dr. Poe, both instrumental in founding this place and getting it up and going, are here. So if I can't answer it, I will say Mr. Gels, the principal, could not be here today, and that's why I'm even speaking at all, or it would be him up here answering it. But if you have questions, I believe Sarah has the mic, and she can come to you, and you can ask a question.
You may have said this earlier, but the kids that don't get accepted into the Ignite institute, they have access to all the same pathways that are on high school.
And I can't speak to Kenton, I have to ask Shauna or Dr. Webb, but at Boone County, yes. They can do everything. If you want to be an engineering student, a couple exceptions, biomed is not in every high school. Now, I'll be honest, with the CTE money that we just received, all of our high schools, the money and the amount, all of our high schools are going to start biomed and computer science if they don't have it. That's the plan right now. So yes, they will have access no matter where they're at.
Last question for your criteria. Whenever you say you don't get accepted, what's that criteria line to draw to say accepted versus not accepted?
So our criteria is there's pieces about discipline grades. They have to be ready for Algebra 1 in English as a freshman. Then from there, it's a first come, first serve. They open up the application at a certain time, and you have to be one of the first ones to get in. And then based upon that score, blind score, then you're chosen to come. And if not, you're put on the waiting list. Typically, we may get 30 or 40 on the waiting list come because kids change their mind over summer and say, I'd rather stay in my home school.
You said that Kenton County was 45%, Boone County was 45%. Do you all have, so Newport would get this many spaces, or is it just based on application?
It's the outside of Boone and Kenton. The MOU is written 45% Kenton County out of the 100%. So if it's 1,200 kids, Kenton gets 45%, Boone gets 45%, and then the region, anybody else gets those 10%. So if it's 300 spots in the freshman class, right, which is right now where we're at, then we take the 45-45, and if we don't have the applicants from the other regions, then we split between Kenton and Boone the remaining spots in that freshman class.
And do those other school districts have to provide their own transportation?
Yes. So basically, you know, the MOU is out there. It's public document, but what they have to give us is their seat, their base seat to pay. Walton, and to be honest, Walton and Covington both. Walton is looking and going, all right, we're going to have to cut our people at this amount because at a small district, if you lose 30 kids, that's $120,000. That's 2 teachers, 1.5, whatever it may be. And they just said, all right, we're going to have to regulate how many kids. So they probably will not go above 30 kids, which we want those split. But transportation's an issue. Campbell County, some of those farther districts, trying to get kids here at a certain time and then getting them back, there's logistic problems.
So I know that you all said that for this particular building, Toyota was sort of the catalyst for this idea and bringing everybody together. But let's say in Central Kentucky, my first question is, how would you even start planning something like this with a bunch of different players without one big Toyota in the area to bring it all together? And then my second question is, what kind of a timeline is there, or did you guys have, I guess, from idea to open the doors?
Okay. Now I'm gonna make a joke, and I hope you don't get mad at me. I was gonna say let's ask Dr. Poe, but if I do, we might not be out of here by 2:30. I love him, but if you know Dr. Poe, no, and he can speak to that. I can speak to I lead You're talking 5 rural counties in just down the road on 71. And it really, the catalyst was the superintendent sitting around the table saying, we don't have equitable opportunities. And so let's figure this out for our kids, because we're hearing from the industry, Dow Chemical, NAS, those in the region, you've got to do a better job producing students that can come here and work for us immediately. And so then it was the superintendent sitting around saying, all right, what can we do? How do we get to that point for our students? And so we started our lead with, let's start with 35 and then build it from there to really meet the needs of the industry around the advanced manufacturing, because they would tell us, we don't need engineers. Or that's when I was there. They were like, I don't need engineers. I can find them anywhere. I need the skilled guys that I'm getting ready to have a flush of retirements to fix everything. And so that was kind of the lead here, I think, and this is where Dr. Poe or Dr. Webb can speak. I think it was about a 5-year planning process with Toyota to opening. It was quite a bit of sitting down. How's this going to work? How's it going to look? I mean, honestly, I think, and not putting work, we were anticipating 250 kids starting out. Then Kenton come on board with what they had at the academies, and all of a sudden we went to 800 kids starting out the first year. So it really changed the dynamics of what we were thinking here. And it has been a work in progress since then. Anything, again, Dr. Webb or Dr. Poe? Okay, so they have their partners that they're working on those year-long projects. So there's a certain time slated that they would work with their year-long project partners to get that project done. The other time is, to be honest, the first step is you have to realize I need extra help or I'm behind in a class. So I have to sign up and go see this teacher at this time to get some tutoring, some extra help. If that doesn't help or doesn't happen on that student's behalf, others will make that choice for them. So instead of going to a club or going, we used to do before COVID, weightlifting, or they would have a run club during that time and they would get exercise during that time, or drama or art or whatever they may be interested in, then that choice is made for them. And the teachers all have a Google Doc. They sign kids up and say, I need this kid during this time because they're not being successful and not making the decisions they need to make. So at first we want our students to own it. But if you're not going to own it, then we're going to have a safety net for you. Yes, sir.
Do you guys have a special education population where it's difficult to apply? If so, who provides the
So yes, we do have special ed students. Sure.
We actually see a reverse bell curve here at a time. So in most schools, you have your special ed students, your average students, and your gifted students. We have special ed students, average students, and gifted students. A third of our population is identified gifted. So out of 1,000 students, we have over 700 areas of identification just in this population, across 320 students. We also have a very high population of students with IEPs, and we have special education teachers here who address, who work with our general ed teachers to make sure that their academic needs are met. It's been a unique situation that perhaps we didn't necessarily anticipate when we started, but has become very much a part of the culture of what Ignite is.
So the MOU states we provide, if it's collaborative services or if there's a little bit of, hey, we need additional help in the classroom, Ignite staff will do that. If it's PT, OT, anything that's more severe where a student may need somebody to sit with them, then that goes back to the home district to pay for. Okay, so base level, we'll take care of it here. It's covered in what you pay. When it's a special service, speech, whatever it may be, district, home district, you have to send somebody here to support that.
Do your teachers work an extended contract or get summer days or like, and then I guess, I'm thinking like, what does professional learning look like? It's where you have a staff with a common
on mindset and vision, how you kind of foster that?
Okay, so the first thing, normal contract for them, they do get extended days. Each of them have to do an externship. So they are responsible to go out and stay up on what's happening in the field. So they have 10 days for externships that they have to do and professional learning. Big thing that they've done here structurally, one is because of transportation. So the school day ends and as you see the kids leave, right? Well, they're still on contract. So guess what they're doing right now? They're in PLC planning, talking about, all right, math, what are you doing in algebra? What are you doing in English? And how do we mold those things? Because we want that isolation, that silo gone here. So their PLC, they're planning, it's together and it's from 2 to 3 or 2 to 2:45. Yes, ma'am.
Do you find teacher satisfaction better here than in normal settings?
I think we can cherry pick. Because if you come and you visit and do what you did today, you see what we have. You see the culture and the climate. This is like a college. It's very much an independent. I'm in charge of my learning. And so it doesn't mean that we don't lose teachers. We do, because it does. It's just like anything else. When you're teaching in an open space, that may not be your thing. You may experience it for a year and say, it's not the place. It's just I can't do this in an open space and teach U.S. history in here. And so we do lose some. We lose some for administration, but it's not heard a lot say, I'm leaving because I don't like it here. Yes, sir.
Are you doing anything at your elementary schools, prepare students to come here?
So I think I can speak for both Kenton and us. We're both Project Lead the Way districts. I mean, I think they have it, my last time, I think you have it in about all your elementaries, correct? And we are 3 short of the 15. We have 3 schools that are not Project Lead the Way launch. And I'll be honest, both of us worked together with Bosch. Bosch gave us 4 years ago, $310,000 over 3 years. Kenton used it to prime that PLTW pathway K-12. We used it for different things in the beginning, and now we're at providing our schools all of the supplies and everything they need through the Bosch grant. And so we are pretty much a K-12 system with PLTW because we want that to be recruitment. And I know Kenton did some summer camps to try to get them into STEAM very early on. Yes, sir.
You mentioned talking about accommodations and such. Certain things were included with basically with the student. Is that speaking on that district gets per student or is there a condition?
It is. So the agreement, and Ken and Boone put in a certain portion. Okay, it's a set amount every year that we agree to based upon what we've run the school in on the budget. And then we have employees which aren't a part of it, but they get so much money here to run, and that's included. Does that make sense? Okay. Guys, I got about 2 minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Webb. Any other questions? Again, feel free to email me whatever you need to do to give you tours, do whatever you want to do. What I want to do now is turn it over to Dr. Webb and Ms. Harney. They are Kenton County Superintendent, and is she Chief Academic Officer? I was getting ready to say Assistant Superintendent, but I wasn't for sure. And to be honest, when we started this, Dr. Poe, Dr. Webb, we went to Houston to see John Tanner and Community-Based Accountability System, and we sat down with them, talked. Kenton County jumped on board and started, and that's what we've adopted here at Ignite, is the Community-Based Accountability System. So I thought it'd be a great time, if you've not heard about what is going on with that, Dr. Webb would be an expert and good choice to talk to you about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Webb.
So good afternoon. Welcome to Northern Kentucky. Welcome to Ignite. Bill didn't tell me that I was about to follow the kids giving you tours. That's hard to act to follow, right? Our kids are pretty cool here. Great building, great facility. And I just want to add one thing real quick. You may not have this facility, but we had academies in an old vocational center over in Kenton County before we came here. And it was working very, very well. Boone had a similar program in another building. So people come in, they see this gorgeous building that Boone done a wonderful job with, by the way. And that's not a barrier. We can have these schools, these opportunities for kids anywhere. I can talk about this place all day long too. But I'm not here to talk about that today. I'm here to tell you a little bit about community-based accountability system and what we're doing in Kenton County. We only have about 25 minutes, and then we'll let you ask some questions. So there's no way we could cover this topic in 25 minutes. So you're going to get a really, really high-level overview. And if you have questions, we'll take a few questions at the end. But if you really want more information, we'd be happy to share with anybody, anytime, anything we have. We do that quite often. So let's jump in. So if you're not familiar with community-based accountability system, John Tanner, as he said, we took a group, Randy and I, back when Randy was superintendent of Boone County, to Houston and spent a day or two with John and a bunch of districts in Texas that were working on community-based accountability system. So I attribute a lot of what we're doing to John Tanner and Test Sense. So I want to make sure I shared that up front. I think they've changed some language and stuff now, but what we're doing is really working well for us. So community-based accountability system is exactly what it sounds. Who are we actually accountable to, and for what are we accountable to them for? I've been superintendent in December, will be 15 years. I've yet to have had a parent in 15 years call me and say, why isn't my kid proficient? Man, during COVID, I got a bunch of calls on face masks. Bunch of COVID, I got a bunch of calls about how are we going to do synchronous learning, and we did that in our school district. Change classes just like you were in regular school. So I assert to you that school system and schools are more than what we're getting ready to get back in October. And it's taken me a long time to come to this point, to be honest with you. And I could tell you many things that's brought me to this point, but I don't have time to do that today. But I will hit on them a little bit as we move forward. So if you go to our website, you can see exactly what I'm going to show you. It's under Common Clicks if you ever want to just go take a look at it. This is our community-based accountability system. You'll see an overview that we put in there. But basically, the community-based accountability system has 7 pillars. So we have 7 pillars in our school district, and they're over on the right side. And these are not in priority order. And you may be sitting there saying, you mean, yeah, we listed student learning progress number 1 simply because that's the way it was when we started.
They don't see that on the
They
screen.
can't see it. There we go. So student learning progress, student readiness, engaged, well-rounded students, community engagement and partnerships, professional learning, quality staff, physical operations systems, and safety and well-being. Now, you may have structures in your district or your schools that are very similar, where you list priorities in your school or school district. I'm going to tell you that we have embraced this model because it is a holistic approach to accountability. In this model, these 7 areas over on the right, if you go on our website, you see we have developed 7 pillar action teams. I told our team when we started, and just so you know, we jumped into this right after COVID. Some conversations we had, I would submit to you that educators in Kentucky that I know and talked to, and I know in our district, we're about 14,000 kids, so we're a pretty large district, done more for kids in that 2-year period than I've ever seen in my career. And yet, I'm not being critical, I'm just being honest, one of the first things I've already seen is call to action over native schools. And I would tell you, we're not adequately measuring the work that occurred over those 2 years. I'm telling you, in our district, we're doing this, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how we're doing that. But in our pillar action teams, we have 7 of them. They meet a minimum 3 times a year. They include board members, students, parents, business folks, teachers, administrators, principals. We have about 100 people involved. And when we started, I said, if we do nothing more than get 100 people engaged in accountability in our school district, more knowledgeable about what accountability is and what our data says about our school district, then it's a win for us. Because I don't know about you, we didn't have that. We had pockets of it, but we really didn't have any systemic way to get people engaged in conversations around accountability. We get our test scores back. People are either happy or unhappy. You celebrate or you put some changes in place in October, and then people move on. That's not happening for us anymore. So when we have our pillars, we had our action teams, we developed what's called key questions. And under each pillar, there's key questions. And those key questions were developed by the pillar action committees. Our team obviously took in some key questions that we thought were valuable, but they were tweaked, they were changed, they were dropped, they were added. So the first year, this is the way it works. If you go to our website, you can see all of this. We have signaling. 3 times a year, we have signaling. We have our action teams come together. Shauna's going to talk to you a little bit more in just a few minutes about what some of that looks like. But our team makes professional judgments on a ton of data and action steps we have in place to improve for our kids. And then they basically code our school district as a district in that area. Light blue means we need a slight change. Green means things are going extremely well. Blue means we need a significant change. It's going to require some money. And that key's at the bottom of this. But what I want you to understand is at least 3 times a year, every single one of these pillars and these questions are signaled by our teams. And that's the little key at the bottom that talks about how we're doing in each one of these areas. So each key question is run through an accountability engine, which I'm not going to go deep in, but every question has to be ran through this for it to make it in the system. We adopted the AASA Transition Readiness document. AASA has a research-based document that thousands of educators across the country came together and put in place. I say in our overview on our website, we still value state assessment. We always will. But I'm going to be honest, we use our transition readiness document because it's based on research. If you go to the AASA website, you will see one of the things is student engagement and extracurricular activities. That's been a goal in our district for many years, but we're really zeroed in on it now. The research is very clear. Kids are engaged. What do you think happens? One curricular or co-curricular activity increases the kid's potential. Research-based. Well, that's part of ours. So I'm going to click on this real quick. I don't have time to spend a lot of time on it, but this is just the high school one, and you're going to see a different version. Excuse me, this is just the exiting one. Shauna's going to talk to you about how we make K-12. But this is on our website. You can see it. One of the things you'll see at the bottom, true graduation rate, because for years I've complained about students with alternate diplomas not counting. And I know it's not a KDE issue, it's a federal issue. But if your school or district has a bunch of these students who are doing the work and doing what's in their alternate portfolio, then we count. And we make sure everybody knows that in our community. Let me get back to the PowerPoint. There we are. Thank you. One of the main reasons, 6 years, I've been superintendent now 6 years. We've really been trying to have a school system and not a system of individual schools. Big believer in that. I think Shauna will tell you that we've changed dramatically in that fashion. You know, it's 18 schools, 14,500 students that's hard to do, but I can tell you we made great progress. The other thing we've really tried to do is embrace this. If you don't take nothing away from this today, I'm going to encourage everybody in here to embrace this. John Tanner actually draws this. If you've ever seen me present, this is his drawing. And basically, it's changing the mindset, the culture of what you do in your buildings and districts to a forward-facing versus looking in the rearview mirror mindset. It's a big change. And I can tell you, this is what I'm most proud of in our district. We are now making decisions right now based on data. We're going to get the test results back here in a month or two, and then we're going to take our action plan and put it in the seat like we always do, and we're to meet the requirement. But folks, that is all autopsy. That's rear view. We're going to use that data, obviously, analyze and make changes where we need to. But we've already got a plethora of data. This mindset is what's really moved us forward in my mind. And at this point, I'm going to let Shauna come up. and talk to you a little bit. We have a chief operations officer, a chief academic officer who oversees the side of the house. We didn't have time for both of them. But I will tell you, our chief operations officer can talk to pillars 4, 5, 6, and 7, exactly what you can with construction. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to her, let you talk to you about the pillars.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. Good afternoon. So as Dr. Webb just mentioned a minute ago, we have expanded how we define transition ready. Obviously, we embrace and value the definition and how that's put out by the State Department, but we have expanded what that looks like, sounds like for students in our district. And we also really wanted to get away from the understanding, I think when a lot of people still hear transition ready, they go straight to high school. So we have really tried to evolve the understanding that this is a K-12 issue. We can't send students to high school and expect them just to all of a sudden become transition ready. So from how we identified it at the high school level, we worked collaboratively with our stakeholders to back map that to every level, and that is defined, and I'll start here with the high school one. And from this high school version that he's going to pull up here for us just in a minute, we started with that one. Obviously, our seniors, how we have expanded transition ready. We have taken the document and back mapped that to what's this look like at middle school, what's this look like at elementary school, so that we are really celebrating many, many areas and factors that we believe qualify a student to be considered transition ready. So this is where we started with high school. If I go back into the document down here, I believe I'm going here. Here. Yep. And we have done the exact same at every level. Yeah, it's not working. We've done the same thing at every level, middle and high. So, really looking at the same attributes, the same data sets. For the first time ever, we're really talking about a GPA in elementary school. I mean, with our intermediate students, we've just not really acclimated and talked about a GPA and the importance of a GPA and how that, at an early age and then moves into the middle school. So, we have two districts, one being that 100% of our students, when they exit our stage of graduation, are transition ready, and the other that we have 96% attendance. So everything we do really is centered around what role for all of us, K-12, to help our students reach transition ready, but also how do we equip our staff to be able to equip our students in achieving these areas. I'll just, I'm going to go back and forth a lot. So
Okay.
If you can stay up here. So the next slide here, I just want to talk a little bit about our process. If you want to go down to slide 5, please. So Dr. Webb shared with you, obviously, the board adopted last year, and so how did that come to life? How did we make that happen day to day? And before CBAS, we obviously had an action plan, like everybody does, that really, was the driving force of how we spend our day to day. So I'm just going to have him click on the action plan here just for a minute, because truly, once we adopted this accountability system, we then incorporated those key essential questions that Dr. Webb showed you into our action plan. So with every pillar, there's a key essential question that drives our action plan. And then we list out what evidence and what sources of data will help us know if we're making growth or if we're building traction in that area. Based on then the key question, the evidence, what are action steps that we are holding ourselves responsible for in terms of how we train our staff in an ongoing way, how we structure our meetings, basically how we do everything. So this really, truly for us is a living, breathing document. And we really believe that the action steps in here, along with, our core beliefs and the spirit in which we work together, that this is how we're truly fostering growth in our district and allowing us to achieve our goals of 100% of our students becoming transition ready. We are now at a point, we meet monthly as a cabinet in our central office. We run through this entire action plan, 7 pillars. There's probably, I'd say 35 to 40 key essential questions, and we can get a snapshot of our district In about 2 hours, we're running through this entire action plan, looking at data, talking about adjustments that we need to make, talking about celebrations, what's working well, who we can showcase and highlight. And we do that every month in about 2 hours in our cabinet and central office. And we have then now started really modeling that so that our principals are embracing that same type of work as they take their school action plans that is heavily connected to our district action plan. They too now are really starting to see the value of, with their teachers and their staff, reviewing, here's the actions of our action plan. Here's what we said we needed to do. Here's how we're monitoring if it's working well or not. And then in real time, being able to celebrate, let folks know what we're working on is working and we're seeing growth, or identify it's not working. What's the root cause? And what do we need to do differently, or what adjustments do we need to make? So this truly is a living, breathing document for us. And as Dr. Webb just mentioned, when it comes to CDIP and CSIP season, this is just folded into the section as far as your action planning. We have already, I mean, we obviously have to plug in and do all the other components of that, but this is finished for us, and we're starting the ground with this action plan at the beginning of the school year, not gearing up for thinking about that right now. We talk a lot about, if you want to go back to the slide, please. You didn't know you were going to do this for us, did you?
I didn't, but it's no issue.
Dr. Webb mentioned that we have a lot of data that has really allowed us to look at more than we've ever, quite frankly, in my career, looked at data. And when we had to be vulnerable when we first started this process, because we asked those key essential questions and we identified evidence and data, and we had to be willing to flip the rocks, as we say a lot in our office, of, okay, we asked the question, what's the data and the evidence telling us? And so we had to be okay with knowing, wow, it's not telling us what we thought or what we wanted. So, that was culturally, we had to come together around that topic. But, we have so much data to use at our fingertips. And I know we all have data, but I think where we've grown as a district is, how do we use that data? And how is that really causing us, back to that slide that he showed you, how is that causing us to make adjustments the very next day for kids in the classroom? Or it might not be an immediate impact, but it's something that we're then putting a timeline and a plan together that will eventually make an immediate impact. So if I could get you just to go back to our district website where Dr. Webb showed all of our key essentials. Within each pillar, there's a pillar dashboard. You could go, yes. I'll click here and then. So within each pillar right here, and this again is accessible for you all, there's a dashboard for every pillar that contains a lot of data. I'm just going to click on pillar 1. And for every key essential question that we have outlined in our action plan by month, you can see then the data that we're recording. So for example, just to help you understand that first question, to what degree are all students reaching instructional benchmarks on assessments for and of learning in reading and math? We then pull out data monthly, whether it's from a district common assessment that we're administering or some of our diagnostics. So obviously this is a very high level view of the data. This is for students we've chunked it 6 through 8, K to 5, 9 to 12. We do administer district common assessments. We have a timeline for that in our district. And these are the percentages of students scoring what we deem proficient in our school district. So this is high level, very high level. And then from there, the power in this is drilling down and putting that data into context. So if I had 66.63% of my K to 5 students, I would want the stakeholders to know, well, that actually only made up, we had 2 grade levels that took a total of 3 tests, so that you know what that data really represents. And then we're able to drill down even by school to see how is this data applicable to the school level. And quite frankly, our teachers are doing this at the classroom level. So what's that data mean for me and for my students? So this is data, this dashboard just represents pillar 1. There's a dashboard like that for every pillar on that website of our action plan. I'm going to let you go back. Thank you. So I don't mess anything up. So this whole process has really for us to use data, to look at data, or maybe identify, you know what, we don't have the data that we need to answer this question. So we have to become more, efficient or set ourselves up to be collecting that data because we weren't even collecting that, so we can't answer that question, and we need a system to collect that data. So it's just really expanded how we use our data. Dr. Webb mentioned it a minute ago about our pillars, but having that broad audience and stakeholders has just really been beneficial because what you see might be completely different than what I see, and you're just getting a perspective from a wide audience. We're getting great questions from our community members, from parents, students. We've had some incredible students give their perspective and weigh in on some of these things. So that has really been beneficial to our team. You want to go to the next slide, please? So I just put before you two visuals that you'll find on our website. And the reason I shared these visuals is just simply because when we chose to adopt this model and head in this direction, it really caused us to step back and reflect. What tools and what structures and systems do we have to really be able to equip our people? If we expect this and we want this for our students, then what can we do? We have to equip our staff. One of our mission is we're about all kids. And we recognize that if we're about all kids, we have to be about all staff. So we call this the Wheel of Fortune in our district. It's an instructional wheel. And if you look at the outside perimeter of the wheel, it's really just, a process, starting with just what are your visions and your goals? And that then everything is centered around that vision and that goal. And you can follow the steps on the outside, but it's basically how we're modeling what we're doing in real time. We're looking at data monthly to know, do we have, what are we doing well? What do we need to continue to grow with? When we talk about implementing, having monitoring progress and analyzing data in PLCs, that 2-hour cabinet member meeting that I referenced a minute ago, that's really our PLC at the district level. And so that's just really a process that we're modeling district-wide, and we've really started to see a ton of traction with our principals and school level leadership teams embracing that same process with teachers, that they are using this data in real time to really equip teachers then to know if something's not working, I'm going to have a structure in place to collaborate with teachers to help me the very next day or the very next week know something differently that I need to do with students. So, and then obviously just the inside part of our wheel, if you go straight to the center, transition readiness, because that's one of our only two goals, that we want everybody to be transition ready at every level. So the rest of that wheel really is just resources that we hold ourselves responsible of how we can equip our people in ensuring that they are helping our students to become transition ready. The next slide, and this slide is embedded in that wheel that we just set up there, but our comprehensive MTSS structure is really the backbone of everything that we do, always reminding and emphasizing with our staff that MTSS is not just a tier 2, tier 3 intervention. MTSS, obviously, we all know it. The foundation of that pyramid is solid, strong, tier 1 instruction. And this really just helps us keep conversations in check, that everything is equitable for our students, equitable for our staff, and that we have a process of working with students who do need help above and beyond that strong tier 1 instruction. So you're sitting here and you've listened to us very quickly talk about a process that we could probably spend all day talking to you about. And I just will end by saying, how has this strengthened or helped change our culture for us in our school district? And, I really believe that we are collaborating more with all stakeholders, with our teachers, with just the sense of collaboration has grown. The amount of data that we either weren't collecting or we were collecting, but we weren't using in real time has just grown for us tremendously. But it's in that real time so that we're able overall to better support the needs of our staff, which in turn is making a greater impact for our students when they need it to make that impact in that moment. So I just pulled out 2 examples because some of them, like I said, can lead to immediate action. And so one of the examples as a result of really seeing that data up on a screen, you know, we all have to be vulnerable. That data is right there for everybody to see. And we started bringing teachers together in real time. If some of those common assessment scores were not where we wanted them to be, we were bringing teachers from all 4 of our middle schools or all 11 of our elementary schools together. We were utilizing funds to compensate teachers and paying them to do this. Sometimes that's they are using professional learning hours, but we're bringing them together in real time based on that data so that they can collaborate across the district and talk about what was working well for you. I'm noticing this trend in your data. I'm not getting that. And they're able to better understand the standards together. They're able to just talk about things that they need to adjust with their teaching and planning, that they can make immediate impact for their students the very next day in the classroom. So an example of, you know, might not be immediate, but the result of seeing some of this data, you know, when Dr. Webb had up the signaling colors, we signaled right off the bat that we got an issue with gaps. And I think it's become cliche, like closing gaps. Well, what's that really mean? Closing what kind of gaps? I mean, so we really have developed a lot of recognition and some plans of, if we're going to close gaps, we've got to put some plans in place, some timelines of tackling some certain areas. And I've just identified here some things in this second bullet. They might not be immediate impacts, but we're making plans to grow this area because it's showing us that we've got work to do in that area. So that is all I have, and Dr. Webb is going to come back and share with you how we put all this together in a nice annual report.
Just stay up here.
Okay.
So you don't have to open it, but
Okay.
it's on our website. It's at the bottom of the page. We started last year. We'll do this annually. At the end of the year, we have a big meeting. If everyone wants to come, all our pillar access team members. By the way, one of our students contacted our pillar 7 chair the other day and said, I got something I need to pitch to you before our next meeting. That's what's happening, folks. And it's very exciting. But our annual summary is there. You can look at it. We actually videoed it and put it on our website. You'll hear me give an overview of it, and each one of our pillar chair persons go through every pillar with data, strengths, areas of growth, and we're going to continue to do that. So once again, it is a very comprehensive system, and it's made everything we do tight, and it's all connected, and there's a lot of collaboration. So it's really helped us get going in the right direction. And as Shauna said, it's unbelievable. One of the things, I kind of expected it, but I didn't. We actually have more data and more accountability on ourselves now than we ever had. So we are transparent. I mean, you can see we put our dashboards right there. So you go through and look at those dashboards, you'll see. So if you want to know how can you really measure safety? We've got a dashboard, how we've done it. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's there. So if we can help in any way, just let us know. One other thing I want to share, she shared a couple of charts, our MTSS system and our wheels. You can't access all of that. Some of it's password protected and all that, but if we can help you with anything and share anything, we'd be happy to. We're not trying to keep it hidden. A lot of our clicks sometimes lead student data, and we want to make sure that we don't accidentally give people access to student data. But if there's something on there, if you see that wheel, if you see that MTSS system, our MTSS system, folks, if you don't have one, if you don't have a good one, our team has done a phenomenal job. Every one of those little dots on there are links. They're tools. It's amazing what we've done in SCB. Social emotional behavior. Some of the things our team's working on is incredible. So we got about 3 minutes. We have to try to answer any questions you may have about CBAS. Yes. So we're actually revamping it right now. Well, we actually just finished revamping it. You want to give them the 60-second version?
Last year was the first year we put pen to paper. Obviously, that was a question we called out in our action plan, and we didn't have anything that identified and put out what is fidelity. So we met our folks where they were and really hit some basics. Do we have are you functioning with a core MTSS team? Do you have a plan? What's your schedule? Some very basic components. Gave feedback and worked with our schools around that. And obviously that feedback allowed them to correct some basics if some basics weren't in place. But, going back to that MTSS is about all kids all levels, all tiers. We researched a lot of rubrics that are out there. We actually tweaked one that came out of Loudoun County Public Schools in Washington, D.C. And we just rolled that out within the past month, and that is very comprehensive. There's 4 areas to it. It's brand new work. Our team internally in our office just went through and marked where we believe each school is in each area. And actually right now our principals are engaging in that same exercise with their school teams so that we can come together and kind of talk about where we are. And then that really drives how we provide that differentiated support in addition to our ongoing tier 1 support.
So if you're interested in Fidelity rubric, which I've never seen, I'd encourage you to reach out to her and get a copy of it. It's phenomenal. The other thing I would say is in between our leadership team meetings, we have monthly principals. Our instructional team meets with principals, team, leadership meets with schools, and goes through all this data monthly. So it's pretty powerful. Other questions? Well, thank you all. If we can help you in any way, you've got our information. Glad to see you in Northern Kentucky. Hope you enjoyed your visit. Thanks for coming.
Okay, cool. So the day is almost over, I promise, and we'll release you to go back home to your communities and families. And before we did, though, I wanted to really quickly outline the next steps for you as members of the ILN. So we have this in-person event, and of course, we've already discussed the exhibition of innovation and learning that'll happen in June. But between that time, we're going to have 3 virtual meetings. So those are up here, November 10th, February 9th, and April 13th. They happen from 2 to 3:30. It's an hour and a half. The plan for those meetings is to offer additional professional learning based on what your needs are. So at the end of today, and I may discuss this in a minute, we'll be sending out, I said today, it won't happen today. On Monday, we'll send out a detailed feedback form that asks, based on the conversations we've had, based on the work you're doing in your communities, what is further learning that you need from national partners and other organizations? And we will make connections with them so that they can join us on these meetings and offer that learning and offer that support. Additionally, so today we really got to the envisioning part of the work we do. During these meetings and what we do at the end of the year is going to be kind of pulling our sleeves up and really digging in. So the idea is to connect your districts with other districts doing similar initiatives or that have similar values and visions, and allowing that space for discussing problems of practice, utilizing inter-district collaboration. The point of this network is to network and is to elevate the work of all of us by making those connections. And that's what these meetings are meant to do. So yeah, like I said, June 2023, the invitation to host that exhibition is open. Next steps continued. In that feedback form I send you, you will have a space to let us know if you're interested in hosting for the kickoff event. I'm sorry. We'll ask for feedback on this kickoff event. We'll let you know if you're interested in hosting, not only the format, so how you want the exhibition to look, but also the audience. We have an option to make the audience just the KYILN, just the network, or we can expand that audience and make it a bit broader and larger so that more stakeholders see the work you're doing. My natural tendency is to say, let's open it up and let more folks see, but that is a choice I'm giving to you since this is your network. And for the virtual meetings, we'll be asking what professional learning you are interested in and want to further. And without further ado, thank you so much. This has been the best day of all time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. Please go home and enjoy your weekend and your family.